All right, I'll start from the beginning. Honestly, I don't even know where to start because everything's a huge mess now, but I guess I'll just lay it all out there. My name's Mike, and I was with my wife, Lisa, for about 5 years. Things weren't perfect, but we were planning to get married in just a few days. Things seemed good, or at least I thought they were. We had our routines, our plans, our dreams of a future together. I was completely convinced she was the one, or so I thought. We met when we were both in our late 20s, and from the start she was the kind of girl who knew what she wanted, confident, fiery, always a bit bitchy but in a charming way. I knew she could be tough, but she was also smart and funny, and I was totally in love with her. We spent a lot of time together, traveling, building a life. I was ready to settle down, and she seemed to be too. That's why the signs of trouble hit me so hard when they started showing up. Little things at first, late nights, forgotten phone calls, secretive texts, nothing obvious but enough to make me suspicious. I didn't want to believe it though. I mean, she'd swear she was just busy at work or tired or she didn't want to bother me with petty stuff. Then about a week ago, I noticed her acting weird. She'd suddenly become more distant, snapping at me over nothing, avoiding me in ways she never used to. She also started wearing different makeup, using new perfume I'd never smelled before. I thought maybe she was just stressed out with wedding planning or something. But the real shocker came when I decided to check her phone out of curiosity, something I don't normally do, but I guess I was just feeling paranoid. I found a string of messages on her WhatsApp, flirty, suggestive texts with our neighbor, Jason. They weren't just friendly, they were heated, full of sexual innuendos, promises to meet, and even talk about getting away together. My stomach dropped. I read through everything late at night, heart pounding, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Jason, that guy, I knew they'd been hanging out more lately, I'd seen them talking. A lot more at the mailbox, working on some neighborhood project, but I never thought it was anything more than friendly banter. Turns out I was dead wrong. The messages made it painfully clear they had been having sex, and not just once or twice. The way she described it like it was some secret adventure. I felt rage, betrayal, confusion all at once. She told me she loved me, that she was devoted to me, but she was out there screwing our neighbor. I waited until she got home that night, my mind racing, trying to process what I'd just seen. When she walked through the door, I didn't even greet her. I just stared at her, cold and furious. She looked surprised at first, then defensive. I asked her straight out if she'd been cheating on me. She rolled her eyes, laughed a little, and then started with her typical bullshit. "Oh, you're overreacting. It's just sex, Mike. It doesn't mean anything. Jason and I are just friends. You're jealous because I'm more successful, more attractive, and I don't have to explain myself to you." I couldn't believe the audacity. She was lying, I knew it. Her eyes darted around, her tone was bitchy, almost mocking. She kept insisting it was just sex, that I was paranoid, that I was just insecure. Honestly, I felt broken. I'd spent days building up the courage to confront her, and all I got was her dismissing it, brushing it off like it was nothing. But I wasn't stupid. I knew better. I saw the way she looked at Jason, the way she touched her phone every time I was near. She was hiding something, and she knew I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to everything. The betrayal, the lies, the fact that our wedding was supposed to be in just a few days. How do you prepare for a life with someone who's been lying to you every day? How do you even start to process the fact that everything you built, everything you believed in, was crumbling right before your eyes? I felt like I was losing my mind. The next day, I knew I had to get some clarity. I couldn't just sit there and stew in my anger and sadness. I needed to hear her out, face her. Directly, see what kind of lies she'd come up with this time. I waited until she was in the kitchen, pretending to be busy with her coffee and makeup. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, and then I confronted her again. "Lisa," I said, voice trembling a little, "I know about Jason, about the messages. I saw everything last night." Her eyes flicked up, and I could tell she was annoyed I was bringing it up again. She rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, really? You're still on about that? You're so paranoid, Mike. I told you it's nothing, just sex, like I said, nothing more, nothing less." She crossed her arms, giving me that bitchy smirk that I was starting to hate more and more. I was furious, but I kept my voice calm. Nothing more. You tell me that and then I find out you've been sneaking around with our neighbor talking about getting away, about having his kid. How do you explain that? Her face twisted into a sneer. Look, I don't owe you explanations. I'm not some girl who's going to be faithful to one guy forever. Maybe. I wanted to have some fun, try something new. You think I'm just supposed to sit around and wait for you to come home every night, never experience anything else? That hit me like a punch to the stomach. The way she said it, like I was the problem, like I was some boring, controlling husband who just expected her to stay at home and stare at him. I felt my fists clenched. Fun? You call screwing our neighbor fun? Do you have any idea what you're doing to me, to us? She rolled her eyes again. Oh, grow up, Mike. You think you're so innocent. You've been working late all the time, ignoring me, and I just wanted some excitement. Maybe if you weren't so clueless, you'd see what's going on. I couldn't believe my ears. She was gaslighting me, twisting everything around. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I just stood there, feeling numb. How had she become so cold, so manipulative? I looked at her and saw the bitchy, self-centered woman she'd become. It was like she was reveling in her lies, enjoying the power she had over me. I wanted to believe she was lying, that she'd come to her senses and tell me the truth. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just a moment of anger or regret. This was who she was now, someone I didn't recognize. The emotional impact hit me like a freight train. In that moment, I felt everything: anger, betrayal, heartbreak, and a deep sense of loss. The woman I loved, the woman I was about to marry, was out there cheating, lying, and now trying to tell me it was all just fun. I felt like I'd been slapped in the face, like my whole world was breaking apart. I looked at her, and for a moment I thought about just walking away, leaving her to her lies. But then I realized I couldn't just disappear, not without some kind of reckoning. I needed to decide what I was going to do about this mess. Could I forgive? Could I move past the betrayal, or was this the end for us? My mind kept spinning. I kept asking myself how someone I trusted so much could do this to me, to us. I felt so broken, so confused. All I wanted was to find a way out of this nightmare, but I knew the decision wasn't going to be easy. The betrayal cut deep, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to forget it. The wedding was just around the corner, and it suddenly felt like everything I'd planned for my future was slipping through my fingers. I didn't think I could trust her anymore, or myself. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure if I should jump or try to find a way back. That night, I couldn't sleep. The anger and heartbreak kept me wired, but beneath it all there was this overwhelming sense of despair. I kept replaying everything she said, every lie, every sneer, every excuse. I questioned myself. How did I miss all of this? How did I not see the signs? But more than that, I kept asking myself how I was supposed to move forward from this. The next morning, I decided I needed to get some perspective. I couldn't keep spinning in this emotional tornado. I called my best friend, David, someone I trusted, someone who's been through his own share of heartbreak. I told him everything, pouring out all my confusion, anger, and sadness. I needed an outside perspective because honestly, I felt like I was losing my mind. David listened patiently, then said something that stuck with me. You gotta ask yourself what kind of life you want from here. Do you want to keep fighting for this, or do you want to walk away? Because if she's lying and cheating, she's not just playing with your trust, she's messing with your life. And you don't deserve that. Hearing it from someone who knew me well helped clarify a lot. I realized I couldn't keep waiting around for her to change, to come clean, or to suddenly become the woman I thought she was. I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time with a clear head. I wanted answers, real answers. I knew I had to stand my ground and be honest with her about how I felt. So I arranged to meet her at our favorite park, a place we'd gone on our first date. I figured if I was going to have this conversation, it might as well be somewhere with some meaning, even if that meaning was now broken beyond repair. When she showed up, she was her usual bitchy self. She rolled her eyes, looked annoyed, like she didn't even want to be there. I looked at her and felt this wave of disgust mixed with heartbreak. I didn't hold back. Lisa, I want to know the truth, I said firmly. Are you really pregnant with Jason's kid? Because I want honesty, not more lies or excuses. She scoffed, crossing her arms and giving me that snarky smile. Pregnant, please, Mike. You think I'd tell you if I was? I don't owe you anything anymore. Besides, that's just my business. If I am, then Jason's the father, not you. You're just some guy I was gonna marry because I thought I had to, but honestly, I don't care what you think anymore." My stomach clenched. That was a new level of cruelty. She was making it sound like everything was just some game for her, like I was irrelevant. I looked her in the eyes and felt a cold rage simmering beneath my skin. I knew I couldn't keep doing this. I knew I had to make a decision. I told her I didn't believe her, that I needed proof, that I wasn't going to sit around and be played like a fool anymore. She just laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Proof? You really think I'd just tell you if I was pregnant? You're so pathetic, Mike. Honestly, I don't care what you believe. You're just a guy I was supposed to marry, but I don't want that anymore. Jason's the one I want, and if that means ending everything, then so be it." She walked away from me that day, leaving me stunned, heart pounding, trying to process what just happened. That moment was a turning point. I realized she wasn't going to admit to anything. She was too far gone in her lies, too caught up in her own bullshit. I felt like I was drowning, but deep down, I knew I had to get out of this toxic mess. I couldn't keep clinging to a dream that was already dead. I started thinking about all that I'd lost: trust, safety, future plans, and how I was going to pick up the pieces. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay with her anymore. After that confrontation at the park, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. Every day was a blur of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had fallen apart. Just days before we were supposed to walk down the aisle, I was faced with the woman I loved betraying me in the worst way imaginable. It was like my entire world was crumbling, and I didn't have any idea how to hold it together. In the following days, I started to piece things together. I realized I needed to gather more concrete evidence if I was going to do anything about this. I couldn't just rely on her word or some vague suspicion. So I decided to do some digging myself. I knew she was still talking to Jason, and I suspected they were meeting up. I needed to see for myself. I started checking her emails, her social media, even her phone when she wasn't looking. Honestly, I felt dirty doing it, but I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to slip up again or come clean. I needed something to hold onto, some proof that this nightmare was real. Then one evening I found something that made my blood boil. She made plans to meet Jason later that week, and they were talking about sneaking away for a weekend, just the two of them. The messages were explicit plans to have sex, to escape everything, and even talk about a baby on the way. The word pregnant was there, clear as day. I couldn't believe it. She was planning her escape, her new life with Jason, and she was doing it right under my nose. All the while I was preparing for our wedding, thinking I was building a future with her. The betrayal intensified. I felt so stupid, so naive. How could I have missed all the signs? I was furious at myself for trusting her so blindly. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing she was lying to my face, smiling, pretending everything was fine. She was scheming behind my back, planning a new life with him, and I was left here, just trying to hold on to what was left of my sanity. That night I decided I couldn't just keep silently suffering. I needed to confront her again, but this time with all the evidence I had accumulated. I sat her down in the living room, heart pounding, hands trembling. I showed her the messages. I watched her face fall as she read them, her eyes narrowing into that bitchy glare she always had when she was losing control. She tried to deny it at first, saying I must have faked the messages or that it was all a misunderstanding. But I had screenshots. I had timestamps. I knew the truth. She started to panic then, her voice rising, her tone turning defensive and bitchy. "You're crazy, Mike. You're just jealous. Jason and I were just friends. You're overreacting because you're insecure. You're just mad because I found someone who actually makes me happy." Her lies were flying fast now, trying to dismiss everything I'd shown her. She insisted she wasn't pregnant, that she'd been just kidding, that everything was just a stupid joke. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw her desperation, her fake tears, her attempt to manipulate me into feeling guilty. Inside, I was shattered. I'd always thought she was smart, strong, capable of anything. But now she looked like someone who'd completely lost her mind. I felt so betrayed, so broken that I almost couldn't breathe. How could she do this to me? How could she tear apart everything we'd built, just for a fleeting moment of pleasure and a lie? I knew then that I couldn't go through with the wedding. I couldn't marry a woman who was capable of this level of deception, of lying and scheming behind my back. And so, I decided I had to end it. Not just for me, but for what was left of any respect I still had for myself. That night, I told her I was done. I told her I couldn't trust her anymore, that I was walking away and that I wanted nothing to do with her or Jason. She screamed, called me crazy, told me I was ruining her life, but I didn't care. I'd already lost everything I thought mattered. All I wanted was to get out of this nightmare, to find some kind of peace. I packed a bag, told her I didn't want to see her again, and left that night with my heart shattered into pieces. The days that followed were some of the darkest of my life. I felt like I was walking around in a daze, trying to pick up the pieces of a life I no longer recognized. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that bitchy smirk, the way she lied so effortlessly. It was like my entire future had been a lie, built on deception and betrayal. I had no idea how to process it all, how to move forward when everything I believed in was shattered. I spent most of my time just trying to keep it together, avoiding friends and family because I didn't want to admit how badly I was hurting. Honestly, I felt so humiliated, not just because she cheated, but because I let her get away with it for so long. I kept asking myself, why didn't I see it coming? Why did I trust her so much? It was a bitter pill to swallow. And amid all this chaos, the one thing I couldn't stop thinking about was what she'd said, that she was pregnant. I kept waking up at night, clutching my chest, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut all over again. But I knew I couldn't just sit there and drown in my misery. I had to do something. I couldn't let her or Jason destroy me completely. So I reached out to a lawyer, someone I knew from work, to find out what my options were. I didn't want to be the guy who just got played, who let her walk all over him. I wanted to understand if I had any legal ground, if there was a way to protect myself, especially considering she was claiming she was pregnant. I needed clarity for my own peace of mind. The lawyer told me that unless she had proof, like a paternity test or something official confirming the pregnancy, I couldn't be sure of anything. But if she tried to use that claim in court or manipulate the situation to get money or control, I had options. That was a small comfort, but it also made me realize I had to be careful. I couldn't let her use her lies to destroy me even further. Meanwhile, I also started to think about my options for moving on. I knew I couldn't stay in this toxic mess forever. I had to rebuild my life, even if it meant starting over from scratch. I knew I'd eventually have to tell my parents. They'd been so excited about the wedding, so proud of me, but now I felt like I'd let them down. Still, I didn't want to hide this from anyone. They deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt them. One thing was clear: I wasn't going back. I couldn't trust her anymore, never again. I had to cut all ties and focus on healing. But every time I thought about her, about Jason, about the lies, a deep anger grew inside me. I felt so betrayed, so humiliated, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. How did I let it get this far? How did I love someone who could do this? It was like everything I believed in was a lie, and I was left picking up the pieces. Honestly, I didn't know how to move past it, but I knew I had to try. One thing was for sure: I'd never trust her again, not even a little. My whole world had turned upside down, and I was just trying to stay afloat. In the end, I realized that betrayal cuts deeper than I ever thought possible. I spent so much time questioning everything: myself, her, my future. And I guess what hurt the most was the sense that I had been so blind. I gave her everything, trusted her with my heart, and in return, she played me like a fool. The reality hit me hard. The woman I thought I knew was nothing like the woman who'd been sneaking around with our neighbor, lying about being pregnant. Everything I'd built, all those dreams about our life together, felt like they had been nothing but illusions. I decided I had to let go of the anger, the pain, and the heartbreak. I knew I couldn't undo what had happened, but I could choose how I responded. So I cut all contact with her. I blocked her number, deleted her from social media, and even moved out of the apartment we shared. It was the hardest thing I ever had to do, but I knew I had to do it for my own sanity. I told my closest friends everything and leaned on them for support, even if they were just listening. That helped more than I could say. Over time, I started to rebuild my life. I focused on my work, on my friends, on myself. I went to therapy not because I wanted to forget, but because I needed help processing all that pain. And gradually, the raw wounds started to heal. I learned that trust is fragile, and when it's broken, it's nearly impossible to fix it completely. But I also learned that I am stronger than I thought. I can survive betrayal. I can even come out of it better, more aware of what I need and what I won't tolerate in my life anymore. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. First, never ignore the signs of betrayal, no matter how much you want to believe in someone. Second, trust is earned, not given blindly. And third, sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away, even if it hurts, because staying only prolongs the pain. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar finds strength in my story. Love is fragile and trust is sacred. When those are broken, the only real choice is to pick yourself up and move forward no matter how hard it seems. Today, I'm still healing, still trying to trust again. But I know one thing: I am done with her lies, with her games. I've learned that sometimes the deepest betrayal teaches you the most about yourself. And in the end, that's what really matters. Finding the strength to keep going, even when everything's falling apart.